3 small towns, 3 different fates, and in each, one tiny detail that breaks the case. A midnight text, a dusty ledger by a black loch, and a basement where the truth arrived too late. This is a compilation of 3 tense investigations that won't let you go. If you like suspenseful but non-graphic storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It helps the channel a ton. Everything you're about to hear is fiction, inspired by media coverage and investigative practice. Names, places, and events are invented and told with respect. Let's jump into story 1. The last text Cora Lane ever sent said, "I'm home. Don't start." It buzzed across a screen at 12:41 a.m. on a Tuesday and hovered there, blue and blunt, the way late-night messages do. No emojis, no softness, just the kind of tired edge 2 people get when a relationship has frayed to threads. Cora was 20, too old to be called a kid, too young to have learned how to walk away when love turns into a problem you keep trying to solve. She worked mornings at a hardware store, nights at a diner, and kept a spiral notebook where she doodled tattoo ideas and baby names she swore weren't serious. Friends said she was the glue of their group chat, the one who remembered birthdays and sent dumb stickers at 3 a.m. to make people laugh. By noon the next day, her phone was off. Her sister Tessa felt the absence like a physical ache. The 2 called each other for tiny things. Which detergent is the good one again? Does garlic go bad? You up? And that daily stream just stopped. When Cora didn't respond to an "Are you alive?" text, Tessa tried humor. When humor failed, she tried calm. By evening, calm ran out. At 8:07 p.m., Tessa filed a missing person report. The officer at the front desk did what they always do, took notes, asked for a recent photo, and said the part that always sounds colder than it's meant to be. Sometimes adults take space. Tessa nodded, but she looked past him, through glass, at a wall of wanted posters and a corkboard full of flyers, cats, community yard sales, a blood drive. She pressed her palms flat to the counter and said, "This isn't like her." Detective Mara Hollis believed that. She'd been at this long enough to know that patterns tell on us when we're not looking. Cora's pattern: constant phone use, active socials, predictable work shifts, always 5 minutes early. In Leo County, a lot of missing adults come home by day 2. When they don't, Hollis starts her clock. Day 1. Build the timeline. The last people to see Cora were her neighbors, Kendra and Miles, a couple who shared a thin fence and a thinner patience for noise. They heard voices in the small hours, Cora's, tight and clipped, a man's, lower, traveling. Couldn't make out words, Miles said, but it wasn't friendly. He mimed a hand cutting the air, sharp. The man was Evan Reed, 23, worked construction seasonally, cut lawns when the weather turned, posted long captions about loyalty and how hard it was to be misunderstood. He and Cora had been on again / off again for almost 2 years. They'd had loud months and quiet ones, breakups and half apologies, and a handful of "we're working on it" captions that got more likes than the rest. Hollis asked to see him. Evan came into the station in a clean t-shirt and the wrong kind of confidence. He leaned back in the chair, legs open, hands sunk into pockets, like he was here to help, like he could help by announcing it. "We talked Monday," he said. "You know how it is. Stuff builds up, then it blows over. When did you last see her?" "Night," he said. "Late. We argued on the porch. She went inside. I left. What time did you leave, Evan?" He smiled small. "After midnight. Before 1. Probably." "Phone?" Hollis asked. "What about it?" "We'll need to look at it." The smile thinned. He put the phone on the table like it weighed more than it should. Hollis slid it across to Tech, who had been standing just outside the door like a person you keep in your pocket for moments like this. With consent, you can move fast. They did. Cora's phone was a different story. Pinged last at 12:43 a.m. near the small triangle where Route 7 meets the 2-lane that passes Reed's rental. After that, a dead quiet that made the hair on Hollis's arm stand up every time she looked at the map. Day 2. Widen the circle. Searches start small. Volunteers with clipboards, a droning drone, boots scuffing ditches. They looked behind the diner where Cora clocked out early that Monday. They looked behind the hardware store, through pallets and the sharp smell of fertilizer, just to prove to themselves they were trying. The internet did what it does, spun and amplified. Local Facebook groups traded theories. Somebody posted a doorbell cam clip of Cora walking up her steps at 12:39, keys in hand. In the background, a sedan idled at the curb. The clip looped, pixelated, the way truth can when too many fingers pinch and zoom. By afternoon, a reporter knocked on Tessa's door. "We just want to help," she said, "and then ask the kind of questions you can't answer without breaking something in yourself." Tessa stayed behind the screen. "She's 20, she said into the mesh. She was excited about next month. She bought a plant she can't keep alive. I'm not interested in stories. I want her found." The reporter looked down, embarrassed. "We'll share the flyer." Day 3, the property. By the third day, the case had a hum to it, the background kind. Hollis could hear it when she drove past the Reed rental, a 2-story that looked like it never decided whether it was a farmhouse or just pretending. There was a shed that had been a garage once, a line of pines too straight to be natural, dividing the lot from the neighbor's horses. Hollis had been circling the same thought since day 1. People don't disappear into thin air. They get moved. Cars matter. Dirt matters. Habits matter. If you follow habit long enough, you find where it tears. Evan's car was a faded blue sedan with a bumper held on by zip ties. Tech checked the interior with a light. Nothing obvious. The trunk, too, cleaner than it should be. "He washes," Tech said, half compliment, half warning. They asked permission to look around the property. Evan spread his hands. "You think she's here?" It came out half laugh, half dare. "We want to be thorough," Hollis said. "Yeah, okay, be thorough." They walked the yard in a slow grid. Tech carried a handheld that looks like a toy until it chirps. They checked the shed. It smelled like oil and cut grass. Rakes lined the wall, teeth down, handle ends neat. Someone had pressure washed the floor recently. Water had pushed dust into thin moons along the baseboard. Maybe he liked things clean. Maybe he'd seen a show once about how clean looks like calm. Detectives talked to each other in shorthand. Hollis tipped her head toward the back corner of the lot. the spot where the grass had gone from junk to tidy. The kind of sudden improvement that makes you ask, why now? If you've done enough of these, your senses tune to tiny wrongness. The corner's sod was newer, colour off by a shade. The earth looked not exactly raised, not exactly settled, just different. The handheld chirped once, and then again, softer. That was enough for Hollis to stop walking and breathe in through her nose. The air smelled like late summer cuttings and something else, the kind of mineral sweetness that attaches to your throat and won't leave. She didn't say, I think. She said, tape it off. They didn't dig right away. You don't rush ground. You photograph. You place flags. You let the daylight shift and take the same shots again, because shadows tell stories too. The property turned quiet in that specific way it does when professionals arrive. Neighbours gathered at their own fences and pretended they weren't watching. Evan asked for a smoke. Nobody had one. He put his hands on top of his head and watched the yellow tape flutter, and his face did a series of small calibrations that Hollis had seen before. Irritation, calculation, a pre-built outrage ready to wear if you need it. When the first shovel lifted and the earth changed colour, a darker shade, soil that hadn't seen air in a little while. Hollis looked down and said to no one in particular, slow. What happened next is the part you handle with care. Authorities recovered human remains in a small area of disturbed earth at the rear of the property. The recovery was respectful, methodical, and documented. There's nothing to be gained by describing what doesn't need describing. What matters is this. The recovery was consistent with a young adult female, and there were items nearby that, when photographed and bagged, looked like things Cora's sister could recognize without being told. They paused the work at sunset and returned at first light. By mid-morning, the coroner's van had come and gone. A heavy silence settled where the tape quivered. Someone across the street started crying and didn't try to stop. Hollis didn't look at Evan when they cuffed him. She looked at the ground, the way the turf showed the faint outline of a square, the way the water from the pressure washer had carved little rivulets that ran to the drain and took fine silt with it. People think the big things give them away. It's usually the small ones. Aftermath. Words you don't practice. You don't rehearse telling a sister. You just do it. Inside Tessa's living room, the TV was on but muted, an old sitcom rerun playing to an empty couch. The coffee table had 4 different mugs, all with a different kind of hope in them. Tea, coffee gone cold, a sports drink someone handed her at the Vigil and she couldn't throw away. Hollis Saturday. We recovered remains from a property on East Hollow Road, she said carefully. There are indicators consistent with Cora. Tessa closed her eyes. She folded her hands into fists and then let them go like she remembered she shouldn't be clenching for anyone. Is it her? We'll wait for confirmation, Hollis said. But I wanted you to hear it from me. Silence moved through the room in slow waves. Tessa nodded without opening her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, and then stronger. Thank you for not telling me in the driveway. Later, outside, reporters leaned toward the mic stand like sunflowers. The DA spoke in controlled phrases, based on the current state of the evidence, consistent with charges forthcoming. The The words were careful, because they had to be. Behind the cameras, neighbours held each other and stared at their shoes. On social media, the flyer changed from missing to in memory in an hour. People left comments like they were laying flowers. I didn't know you, but I'm crying. Rest now, girl. We failed you. Tessa didn't read them that night. She put her phone face down and climbed into Cora's bed and hugged the pillow so hard it squeaked. The why that doesn't matter. At the arraignment, Evan kept his chin up, like he'd learned posture from television. The courtroom was small. The wood smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. When the charge was read, he blinked, slow. He pleaded not guilty. That's a sentence that lands differently in a room where people love the person who can't stand up to say otherwise. His attorney used words like complex relationship and ongoing issues and high emotion, phrases that try to stretch a moment into fog. People listen because the law asks you to, but in the back row, a woman pressed her hands together like prayer and stared at the floor. Evidence builds itself whether anyone is ready for it or not. Cell pings marching across a map, a doorbell camera that catches a shadow at the wrong time, receipts for supplies you buy when you are trying to fix what can't be fixed. There were messages too, old, clipped exchanges where apologies' bones showed through. We'll do better. Promise. Don't start. In the end, the story the evidence told wasn't cinematic. It was practical. That's what makes it hurt. Most violence isn't a movie. It's a bad choice stacked on top of a worse one until gravity does the rest. What people remember. Everyone builds a softer story to hold on to. Tessa remembered little things that would still be true, no matter what a judge decided. The way Cora laughed at her own jokes, how she kept losing lighters but never gave up on candles. The way she ate toast over the sink so she wouldn't have to sweep. Friends swapped memories like trading cards. The diner taped a photo by the register and cut a pie and gave it away one slice at a time to people who needed something sweet they didn't have to pay for. At the Vigil, someone said, "We will not reduce her to what happened at the end." People murmured, "Amen," without meaning it religiously. A wind came through and lifted the edges of the flyers and made them sound like quiet applause. Detective Hollis drove past the Reed rental one more time a week later. The tape was gone. The grass was flatter now, less visibly new. People had come and taken their shots. Then they'd gone back to their lives. That's how it works. A place absorbs a story it didn't ask for and learns to stand anyway. Back at her desk, Hollis wrote her report the way she always did. Clear, chronological, without adjectives. She closed the folder and rested her hand on it like a benediction. Somewhere in the building, a phone rang. Somewhere else, another folder opened. How it ends and doesn't. Trials take months. Grief takes longer. There will be motions and continuances, headlines and then fewer headlines. There will be days where Tessa resents every ordinary thing. Morning light, the smell of rain, the way strangers laugh in grocery aisles like they didn't get the memo that the world is different now. But there will also be the opposite. A neighbor who shovels her walk without being asked. A box on the porch with gift cards and hand cream, and a note that says no need to reply. A kid at the diner who asks for the Cora special without realizing he's giving her name a job to do. People will say time heals. Hollis doesn't believe that. Time is a container, not a cure. What helps is how we hold each other while the clock keeps moving. At the end of all this, a judge will read a sentence out loud. Some part of the world will correct itself on paper. The rest will be messier. That's the truth we live with. The same one we keep telling stories about. Not because we love the darkness, but because we're trying to light around it. If you or someone you know is experiencing intimate partner violence, please reach out to local resources in your area for confidential support. Every country and community has different services. A quick search for Domestic Violence Help plus your city can connect you to hotlines, shelters, and advocates. Question for you. Where do you draw the line between give them time to cool off and call for help now? What signs would you want friends or neighbors to act on immediately? That's the end of our first story. 1 yard, 1 patch of ground, and patient police work pulling truth out of silence. Now we head to the Scottish Highlands, to a village where the water seems to know more than people do, and where an old boathouse ledger might hold the key to 4 drownings in 25 years. This is the ledger.
The train left me in drizzle and peat smoke. Kilbrenna wasn't on most maps. Just a kink of grey rooftops around a loch black as old ink. The platform sign was flaking paint. The station master had the same look. I pulled my rucksack tight and tried to draw a clean breath. Even the rain smelled of something kept, bottled, moss and stone, and a secret. Taxi? The station master asked, as if he already knew I'd say no. I'll walk, I said. He nodded at the loch. Mind the bank. The stones are slick. I followed the single road, my boots sliding on slate, and past a church with a square tower and a pub with a stag on the signboard, the Red Hart. Beyond it, the water. Loch Branna lay flat even in rain, a dark pane without a ripple. A swallow skimmed it and was gone. I was here because of a story, and because of my father, though I wasn't telling anyone that. The room above the pub was narrow but clean. The woman behind the bar had strong arms, a black bob pinned behind one ear, and that soft Highland consonant I always wanted to fold up and keep. Isla, she said, drawing a glass. You'll be Mara, the reporter. Podcaster, I said. But Podcaster, she repeated, half amused. Soup's on if you've sense to eat something warm. She slid a key across the bar. Brass, heavy, a stag etched on its head to match the sign. In Kilbrenna, even keys had antlers. Upstairs, I laid out my kit. Small condenser microphone, spare batteries, a battered notebook with a crack down the spine, and a folder of photocopies and clippings, my father's handwriting on some of them. D.I. Lachlan Quinn, 30 years on the job, commendations, and an ability to speak about darkness without blinking. He'd been dead 7 years. I'd done my grieving. I told myself I had. I switched on the recorder and spoke into the quiet. This is Mara Quinn. Branna is a town most of you have never heard of, but if you live here, you know the names. Elsa Stewart, 17, disappeared August 1999. Found 6 weeks later in Loch Branna. Coroner. Misadventure. Since then, the loch has taken 4 more. Colin Ray, 2006. Ewan Forbes, 2013. Morag Kerr, 2019. Hamish Black, last autumn. 5 drownings in 25 years, all ruled accidents. All tied, locals say, to that first summer. I'm here to see what the water remembers. My voice sounded steady. Good. I didn't add. My father signed off on 2 of those files. Kilbrana had 1 shop, 1 church, 2 bars, and a police station in the back of a stone cottage with a blue door. The man behind the desk was broad and bearded, with kind eyes that looked like they'd be kinder if they were allowed. Sergeant Ewan Macready, he said, offering his hand. You'll be the last from the internet. From Glasgow, I said, shaking it. I talk into a mic. Some people listen. His smile was brief. Some folk listen in ways we don't like. I'm not here to stir trouble, I said. I'm here to look at records the public's entitled to. Those'll be with the council office, he said, which wasn't true, not entirely. He held my gaze long enough for us both to know it. What is it you're after, exactly? The drownings, I said. All of them. And the night Ailsa Stewart went missing. His mouth tightened at the name. That one's older than me in a uniform. Old doesn't mean cold. You'll find plenty of folk happy to talk, he said, and plenty who won't. That's the truth of it. Will you? I asked. He glanced down at the desk. Papers gathered in a neat fan, a photo in a cheap frame, him in a football kit, a girl with a gap-toothed grin clinging to his side. Sister or daughter? Hard to say. The frame had a crack across one corner, glued but visible. Off duty, I'll have a pint, he said. On duty, I'll be careful what I say. That'll have to do you, Ms. Quinn. He pronounced the name without a flicker. It landed between us and stayed there. I walked the loch late that afternoon. Rain eased, leaving midges to float in mad constellations around my face. The path folded around pines and hooked past an old boathouse with a corrugated roof, patched in tar. The padlock was new. The wood was not. I put my ear to a seam and smelled damp rope, oil, and the ghost of something that had once been sweet. Lilies, or rot, that thought it was lilies. An elderly man in a green cap appeared from nowhere and nearly made me drop my recorder. Bench, he said, pointing to a slab of stone. You'll do your legs a kindness. Thanks, I said, sitting. You live near? Born here. Tam McVicker. His eyes were misty and sharp in the same way. He looked at the boathouse with undisguised dislike. That's an ugly wee hut. Ugly how? Doesn't belong, he said. We built that after the Second War for the rescue boat. That boat didn't rescue much. You were here in 99. I was here in 79 as well, but you'll have no interest in that. He dug in his pocket and brought out a boiled sweet, unwrapped. You're after the girl. Ailsa Dot. Yes. Pretty thing. Smiled easy. Dealt the beer and didn't mind the old fellas. The last night anyone saw her, I was in the Red Heart. She took her break and went to the water. That's the story. Whose story? The town's. He looked at me, head tipped. You've your father's stare. My skin pulled tight. You knew my father? Knew of him. The Glasgow man. He came up and he went away and left us with our loch. He slipped the sweet back into his pocket like a joke he didn't want to share. "You record, miss?" "I do," I said, "but I can keep some things off the tape." He nodded at the boathouse again. "There's a ledger in there. Rota for search nights. Boat checks. Petrol chits. Names. You want to see who turned out for the girl and who didn't. You'll find your pattern if you've hands to pry and nerve to read. Do you have the key?" His laugh was a cough. "Number, but keys are for folk that like to wait." Tam walked away with that particular Highland briskness that said, "I've told you enough." The rain came back. I walked to the pub and ordered soup. Isla set down a bowl the color of carrots and a hunk of bread that steamed when I broke it. The pub's windows were fogged, the talk low. A man at the end of the bar told a joke about a cow, and nobody laughed. Isla leaned on the counter with her forearms and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Everyone here looks like they've seen the same one," I said. "Tam says there's a ledger in the boathouse." "Aye," she said, "there's a ledger. You'll find the doors tight. You have the key." She didn't answer that. "If you're going to poke, don't poke alone." Is that advice or an offer? She thought about it for a long beat that felt like 2. "I close at 11, she said. We took a torch and a crowbar borrowed from behind Isla's locked utility door. The path was slick enough to skate on, and by the time we reached the boathouse, my hair was snake wet and plastered under my hood. "Hold the torch," Isla said. Her knuckles whitened as she wedged the bar under the padlock's hasp. The metal protested, then surrendered with a scream that made the lock shiver. Inside, the smell wrapped us like a bad blanket. The ledger was on a shelf above a coil of old rope. Big, blue, nylon, nicked and stiff. The book's cover said Brannock Rescue 1972, in letters that once were gold. Isla held the torch while I turned pages. Handwriting changed with the years, but stayed exact. Dates, times, names. Beside some entries, a faint pencil tick, as if someone long ago had meant to come back and never did. "August," I said, 19th to 24th. "Here." I traced the lines. Search Party Rota. The names repeated: Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black. Others too. Jamie McCabe, Seamus Boyd, Isla's own surname in a different hand. "Those 4 drowned later," Isla said softly, as if the boathouse would take offense at being told something it already knew. "Same 4 turned out every night," I said. "Others rotated. These 4 are constant." "Aye," Isla said. "Colin ran the scouts. Ewan had the boat. Morag did everything. She couldn't sit still. Hamish lived for a chance to be useful." "And the night Ailsa went missing?" I turned back. August 20th, 1999. No rota, just a scrawl of names and times like someone writing in a storm. I ran a finger down. Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black, L. Quinn. My hand paused. I heard my own breath before I felt it. "Your da," Isla said, torchlight cutting the edges of her face into a strong geometry. "You didn't tell me." "He came up to consult," I said, which was neat, manageable. I didn't say he'd been assigned after another DI sprained a knee, and someone in Glasgow saw an opportunity to give Lachlan Quinn clean air. I didn't say I'd found his notes in a cardboard box after the funeral, and I hadn't stopped following the line since. He was good at his job, Isla said carefully. Folks said he was quick with answers. Quick with closure, I said. You've all the warmth of a daughter, she said, which might have been a joke. I turned the page. There were more names. S. Macready. I touched it. Sergeant Macready. That's his daw, Isla said. Shona's brother, Ewan's uncle. He died 2 winters after. Who's Shona? Isla shifted the torch. Ewan's mother. A white moth careened across the beam and hit the ledger, leaving a dust of wing. I closed the book gently, as if it were a living thing that could fold away from pain. Why didn't anyone ever join the dots? Isla's mouth tilted. Maybe they did. Maybe there was no picture to see. We put the ledger back and rehung the lock with a contortionist's optimism. Halfway to the pub, a flashlight found us. Ewan stood on the path with his hands in his jacket pockets, light steady on our faces. You'll have that door repaired, he said to Isla, as if it were a courtesy and not an instruction. I'll have it on the list, she said, unruffled. His beam shifted to me. Ms. Quinn, breaking and entering on your second night. You work fast. There's a public interest exception, I said, because arguments were how I slept. There's a cliff half a mile that way, he said, nodding. Some of us sleep fine without falling off it. Sergeant, Isla said with a warning I didn't understand. His light dipped. Good night, he said, and stepped off the path as if the trees were his door. Back in the pub's kitchen, Isla set the kettle to boil without asking, and leaned on the oven while the steam fogged her fringe. You're not the first to come nosing, she said. Bloggers before you. A lad with a drone who nearly lost his fingers to Hamish's net. A woman from STV who thought she'd do a 6-parter and left after she talked to Morag's sister. What did the sister say? That grief should be left where it lives, Isla said. She was right, and I didn't listen then either. Why are you helping me? I asked. She looked down at her hands, the knuckles nicked, a thin white scar across one thumb. Because sometimes the only way to keep a thing is to let it go, she said, and because I liked Elsa. You knew her well? She pulled pints for me when I had no money to pay her, and she laughed at my jokes when I had no jokes to tell. Isla poured the water. And because Ewan's good, and goodness can pull a man apart if he thinks he owes too much. Owes who? Everyone, she said simply, like it was a truth the whole town understood. In the morning, the rain stopped and the sky opened in a pale apology. I went to the council office and asked for inquest reports. The woman at the desk looked over her glasses and said, You'll want to fill out Form 17C, in a tone that meant, go away. I filled out 17C. She gave me a stack of photocopies anyway, like a woman who knew when resistance was more work than surrender. Back in my room, I laid them on the bed and worked through them with a pencil. The autopsies were clinical, relentless, drowning, water in lungs, minor abrasions, blood alcohol in 2, not in 2, manner of death, accidental, boxes ticked, neat signatures, 2 of them in a hand I knew from birthday cards, and once, a note by a kettle, remember to eat. L. Quinn. I set that page aside and kept going. What I wanted wasn't there. Sometimes what you want never is. It was in the margins I found it. Tiny, identical notations on 3 reports. Knot marks on wrists, consistent with prolonged handling of rope. Not ligature marks. Knot marks. Not unique, the pathologist wrote. Could be from rescue practice ropes or boating. Nobody followed it. I walked back to the loch with the rope in my head. At the boathouse, a shadow moved behind me. Ewan. No flashlight this time, just his presence, like another tree. You look like you've decided to hate something, he said. Rope, I said. There were rope marks on 3 of them. The pathologist noted them. Nobody asked why. You'll be making the connections you came to make, he said, with the weariness of a man who'd read the end of every book first. My father signed one of those reports, I said. I felt the words before I heard them. Saying them in the open made the air ache. He wrote accidental. Maybe it was, Ewan said. 5 times, I said. Folk drown all the time, he said. Lakes take folk. Loch Branna doesn't like to give them back. You don't believe that? He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I believe in weather and in stone, and in what folk do when they think nobody's watching. Then why are you saying it? Because you're here to pull bones out of the water and hold them up to the sun, he said quietly. And some of us have to go to the grocery after. He started to walk away. I called after him. Who was Ailsa to you? He stopped, not turning. A girl who didn't mind my da when he smoked at the bar and told bad stories, he said. A girl who deserved better than what she got. And what did she get? Wet, he said, and kept going. Tam found me again 2 days later on the church step, where I sat going over my father's notes until the letters blurred. You're reading ghosts, he said. They're poor company. What do you know? I asked, ready to barter warmth for information. No, there was a bonfire on the green that night, Tam said, settling beside me. Kirk Fair. Music, beer. Ailsa left the bar at 10:30. Last seen heading toward the loch. No Colin Ray walked her part of the way. He said he turned back at the fairy tree. Fairy tree? A hawthorn by the bend. Don't laugh. People toss ribbons on it. It does no harm to be tender with what you don't understand. I won't laugh. Good, he said. No Ewan took the boat out at dawn and came back with nothing. No Morag posted flyers till her hands bled. No Hamish found a shoe, and it broke him. That's what I know. A shoe. Blue trainer, he said. Left. The right turned up 6 weeks after when she did. Where? By the outflow, he said. Where the loch goes to be a river. There's a grate there. It catches things we'd rather not see. Why did you tell me about the ledger? I asked. Because I watched those 4 die again for 20 years, he said, eyes gone watery. They were good and bad like the rest of us, but they had something more in common than a rota. What? They knew the story wasn't true, he said. The town's story. He put his hand flat on the stone step. And they didn't know what to do with that. How do you know they knew? Morag told me, he said. A week before she went in. She said, Tam, I'm tired of keeping watch on a lie. She said there were 2 nights that summer, not 1. What does that mean? She wouldn't say, he said. Then she went for a walk and didn't come back. I called my producer in Glasgow and told him I needed a few more days. He sighed into the receiver, like a man paying out rope to someone who meant to drown herself with it. Just don't come back with a ghost story, Mara. I won't, I said. I'll come back with a ledger. That night, Isla closed early, and we sat in the back room with the radio, a murmur, and the pub dark. You look like you're going to ask me for something, she said. You and Elsa, I said. Were you close? She smiled at her hands. We were young, she said, and nobody knew how to call it what it was. But yes, close. Did she tell you anything about that night? She said she was tired of being everybody's sister, Isla said. She said she wanted to be a secret. Then she laughed and called me daft and went back to the bar. I told her I'd walk her home, and she said no. She said if she couldn't walk 100 yards in her own town, what good was living in it? Did you see her leave? I saw Colin meet her under the sign, she said. I saw him talk with his hands like he always did. I saw him walk with her to the bend. I saw him turn back. I saw Ewan smoke by the door and flick his butt at the gutter, like a man doing his bit for the sea. I saw Hamish wipe down his bar with that stupid striped cloth. I did not see what happened next. Colin denied walking her all the way to the water, I said. Colin denied a lot of things, she said. He asked me to marry him once. Did you? Say no, she said, politely. We've a talent for politeness in this town. It's how we put a bow on a brick. Morag, I said. What was she keeping watch on? Isla's eyes flickered. Morag was the strongest of us. She believed the truth could be scrubbed like a pan if you just used enough salt. She was wrong about that. What did she know? Isla looked at me for a long, long time, and then got up and went to a cupboard. She brought back a biscuit tin and set it between us. I kept this because I keep things, she said. It might be nothing. It might be worse. Inside, wrapped in a tea towel, was a cassette tape. Maxell 60. Someone had written August 99 on the label, in the tidy capital letters of a person who believed in systems. Whose is it? I asked. Found it under the floorboards when I replaced them after the flood, she said. I think it's the bars. The old CCTV system taped audio separate for some reason. I never had the heart to listen. Why give it to me? She looked at my face like a person checking the weather before a long walk. Because you keep asking, she said, and because I can't stand not knowing which is worse, the story we tell or the one we don't. I had to buy a second-hand tape player from a man who sold obsolete technology like contraband. I took it to my room, closed the curtains even though it was noon, and pressed play. The tape hissed. The pub came alive in dust. Glasses, laughter, the rumble of voices, a jukebox clipping off the end of a song. People spoke in bursts. I made out words like stones underwater. Then a voice I knew anyway. "All right, lass," my father said, younger, softer, the Glasgow in him stronger. "You've done a shift and a half." "Nearly done," Ailsa said. The tape caught her smile and pressed it flat, but you could still hear the light. Then, I'm for my bed. You folk to walk you? He asked. I'm fine, sir, she said, half mocking. It's 100 yards. Ewan'll see you past, he said to someone else, his voice lowering. Would you, son? I'm on the till, Ewan said, and the drawer chimed. Hamish. I'll do it, Colin said. I'm that way anyway. Footsteps. The door groaned. The tape went quiet, save for the bar's mechanical heart. Then, my father again. Closer, as if he'd leaned over the counter. Tell me again about the farmer's boy, he said. The one you say's been at you. It's nothing, Ailsa said. Discomfort hidden in brightness like a bruise under makeup. He says things. That's all. It's not all, my father said. The steel in his voice showed for a second. Names. Silence. A glass set down. The tape wobbled and steadied. Lachlan, another voice said. Low, female. Isla's, younger. Let it be. I just want to know who to speak to, he said. That's my job. You're not on duty, she said. I'm always on duty, he said. And then he laughed, a little. Even when I don't want to be. The door went again. A draft. Then a voice in a half-whisper, unmistakable even 26 years on. Sir, Colin said. Sir. A word. Footsteps. The tape stuttered with proximity. A hand laid too close to the mic. I walked her to the tree, Colin said, breathless. Like I said, she told me not to fuss. That's all. You sure? My father said. You're sweating like a liar. I had a pint, Colin said, and tried to laugh. It's hot as Hades in here. Go home, my father said. Sleep. If there's more, you tell me. Colin moved away on the tape. The pub breathed. Then, a door again. The outside swallowed the room's sound for a second, and Elsa's voice came from somewhere just beyond the threshold, bright, calling back in. Night, she said. The door swung. The loch swallowed her. The tape swallowed the loch. There was a long stretch of nothing. Ice, clatter, laughter. Isla humming. A man swearing about darts. The chunter of the till. Then, very near the microphone as if he'd leaned into it, my father whispered to himself. Not for anyone else. Don't go to the water hen, he said. So soft I had to wind it back 3 times to be sure. Not tonight. The tape ended with a click. I sat with it in my hands until the room was dusk again. The words themselves didn't indict anyone. They didn't acquit anyone either. They told me what I already knew, and what I didn't. My father had been in the bar, had cared enough to meddle, had assigned a man, had watched a girl cross a door. He had been close enough to say hen. He had not followed. I went downstairs with the tin under my arm and found Isla polishing glasses in the after-lunch quiet. It's not a smoking gun, I said. I didn't think it would be, she said, relief in her voice the way rain looks on stone. There, whether you name it or not. Why put a mic on the bar? The previous owner had notions, she said. thieves, lawsuits, immortalizing his jokes. He never did catch anything but himself. "I'll keep it," I said, "if that's all right." "You'll give it back," she said, "if that's all right." I nodded. Ewan came in at dusk like a man who wasn't sure if he was supposed to be somewhere else. He took a stool and nodded at Isla, and didn't look at me. "Pint," he said. "Of course," Isla said, drawing it slow. "How's your mum?" He swallowed. "She's the same." "And your sister?" "The same," he said, and the second same was a shield. "You'll be at the Kirk Fair this weekend?" he asked Isla, which was generous. Everyone was at the fair. "I'll be slinging burgers at men who can't cook," she said. "You'll be telling children not to fight." "I'll be losing at the tombola," he said. Then, to me, sharp and flat, "Miss Quinn, what do you want?" "Truth," I said, because it sounded better than my father. He took a long drink and set the glass down. "You think my town killed those folk," he said, "one by one. You think your da missed it or hid it. I think 4 people from the same rota dying is a pattern," I said. "And patterns are stories that haven't been given words yet. Every pattern looks like a net if you're under it," he said. "Careful, you don't tangle yourself." "Is that a threat?" "It's a weather forecast," he said. "Rain. Wind from the west. Bring a coat." He drained his pint and left. Isla watched the door swing shut. "He's not your enemy." "I don't think he is," I said. "Good," she said, "because if he were, you wouldn't know it until your lungs were full." The fair made the whole town smell of smoke and onions. Kids ran with plastic swords. A band on the green misplayed Caledonia with brave hearts. I walked the stalls and recorded the sound of coins landing in buckets, and a woman at the bake sale telling me how to make shortbread like a person delivering medicine. Tom found me at the edge of the water. "Come," he said, not waiting for me to agree. We walked toward the outflow where the loch found its narrow throat and tried to become a river. There was a grate, just as he'd said, a metal maw that looked like it would prefer bones to branches. "There," he said, pointing with his stick. Lodged against the bars, gray with the sediment of years, was a knot, a loop within a loop, spit-whipped and hard. "Bowline," I said, surprising both of us. "You sail?" Tam asked. "I had a father," I said, and wished I hadn't. "Pick it," he said, "or photograph it. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you that in this town, knots get tied and folk forget who made them." I photographed it. I wasn't ready to pull anything loose. On my way back over the green, Ewan fell into step beside me. He carried a plastic bag with a goldfish in it, and looked like a man intending not to think about how he'd explain that to his cat. "You'll walk with me," he said, not asking. We cut toward the church, past the fairy tree with its tatters of ribbon, past the boathouse. The air cooled. The loch lay like a held breath. He stopped and put the bag down in the grass, with a tenderness that would have undone me if I'd been softer. "I know who you are," he said. "Not just the mic, the name period." "Most folk can read," I said. "I knew your da," he said. before I wore the uniform. He taught me to tie a bowline down there on the jetty, so I wouldn't look like a fool when the real Coast Guard came. He smiled without humor. He was good to me. Was he good to Elsa? I asked. He looked past me, his jaw tightening. He tried, he said. Sometimes trying's 2 steps and a door. What are you telling me, Ewan? He knelt and lowered the bag to the loch water, letting it equalize. I'm telling you that you're not the only one who lost something you never had, he said, and that what you want from this might not be what you need. And what do I need? To leave it be, he said. To let folk who live here carry what they've been carrying without your hands on the rope. Isla said you owe too much, I said. He flinched, barely. She'd know, he said. Then he stood and tipped the fish into the loch. It flashed once and disappeared like a coin tossed to a god with a habit of not answering. Why the goldfish? I asked. It was that. Or a coconut, he said. Go home, Miss Quinn. I will, I said, when I've heard the end. You won't like it, he said. I don't like any of it, I said. We stood there with the loch between us like a table neither of us could bring ourselves to sit at. 2 nights, I said finally. What did Morag mean? Ewan's face closed. You talk to too many old men, he said. Tell me. He turned and walked away. Then he stopped, just once, and said over his shoulder, There was the night she went missing, and there was the night we all agreed what had happened. They were not the same night. It was Isla who told me the rest, because she was tired, and because holding a door doesn't get easier if you stare at it long enough. They found Elsa's right shoe by the outflow, she said, a pot of stew bubbling slowly on the stove, like a clock that had given up telling you anything useful. They found her body 6 weeks later. She had water in her lungs. The coroner said she'd slipped. Folk nodded. It made everything quiet. But it wasn't like that, I said. It wasn't not like that, she said. She did go into the water, but not alone. Who with? Isla's eyes filled and didn't spill. Colin, she said, the name landing heavy. He loved her in the way boys love girls they don't understand. He'd had a drink and an idea he wouldn't let go, and he thought the loch would make him strong. He kissed her and she said no, and he kept hold. He didn't mean to push. He didn't mean nothing at all. That's the worst of it. Who told you? Morag, she said. She was there. She and Ewan and Hamish and 2 more. They dragged her out, and they tried to breathe the water out of her, and they failed. They panicked. They made a plan. They told the town she'd gone alone. They told themselves the same thing until they believed it. And my father. He came after, Isla said. He heard rumor, and he dug, and he scared the truth out of a boy who thought he was a man. Then he looked at this place and the people in it, and he made a choice. What choice? To call it misadventure, she said. To keep a town from tearing itself apart. To keep a boy from prison, who would break there and become something nobody could live with after. To spare a mother who'd already lost a daughter. He wrote accidental, I said. The word was a pebble in my mouth. He wrote what he wrote, Isla said, and Ewan hated him for it. Ewan? He's been putting folk in the loch ever since, she said, and the room tilted. I heard myself say, "No." "Colin first," Isla said. "Then Ewan. The other Ewan. Not our Ewan." She shook her head. God, the names. Then Morag, when she told him she couldn't keep it anymore. Then Hamish, who drank himself brave and tried to tell me. Ewan's done it clean and quiet and kind as you can do a thing like that. Rope and a gentle hand. He sends them in, and he makes sure they don't come back. I sat down, because standing wasn't something my body remembered how to do. "How do you know?" "Because he told me," she said, and I could see Ewan in the telling, standing in this kitchen, his hand on the door frame as if the wood could hold him up. He asked me to forgive him. I said I wouldn't. I said I couldn't. He said he didn't expect me to. "Why tell me now?" "Because I think he'll tell you himself," she said, "and because I don't know what you'll do to him when he does." He asked me to meet him at the jetty. Midnight. The loch had the sheen of something sharpened. The boathouse hulked. The fairy tree clacked its dry leaves like teeth. Ewan stood with his hands in his pockets and looked like the loneliest man who'd ever lived. "You know," he said, not a question. "I know what Isla knows," I said. "I know what Tam thinks. I know what the ledger remembers. I know my father wrote accidental and called it mercy. And what do you call it?" "Cowardice," I said. The word surprised us both. He nodded once, as if an argument he'd been having with himself had found its end. "He came to our house," he said quietly. "He took my hand and taught me knots, and he brought my sister a book, and he left. He did his job, and he went back to Glasgow to the life where you existed, and we didn't. He left us to hold a thing that was too big. I didn't know," I said, and the tinny inadequacy of it made me want to sink into the floor. "No," he said. "How would you?" He took something from his pocket, and for a second I thought it was a rope. It was a cassette tape, like the one Isla had given me. Eaug 99 written in the same careful hand. "What is that?" I asked. "The other night," he said. "The one nobody hears. After they found her. After a week. After they'd all made a plan, because plans are what folk do when grief is a room they can't get out of. Your da came to the boathouse and turned on the tape because he turned everything on. He wanted a record. He wanted the truth to exist somewhere, even if he buried it. He didn't know that wanting is not the same as doing. He held the tape like a relic. You'll hear him talk to Colin," he said. "You'll hear Colin cry like a wee boy, and say he didn't mean it, and say he didn't mean it, until he meant nothing else. You'll hear my uncle say we'll fix it. You'll hear me breathe, because I was in the corner like a ghost. And you'll hear your da say we'll call it misadventure, and my mother say please, and Morag say no, and then say nothing at all. Why give it to me?" "Because I'm done," he said simply. "Because I've done a thing for every year since, and the loch is full of my penance, and it hasn't brought her back. Because I hate your da, and I loved him, and I don't know how to carry both anymore. Because you're his, and you're not, and that seems like a place to put this that isn't the water." I stepped closer. The boards creaked. "Ewan," I said. It wasn't a question or a plea. It was just his name in the open air. He looked at me then, really looked, and something like a smile touched his mouth and fled. "Do you know who Elsa was to your da?" he asked, the words brittle, No, I said. And then the ground fell away because of course I did. My father, the bar, the tenderness of Hen. She was his, Ewan said, as if setting down a weight he'd carried in his teeth. He came back up here for training one spring, and he made a mess like men make, and then he left. And my mother never told him because she had a husband and a boy and a town. He found out that summer, and he came, and he tried to be what he thought a father was for 6 weeks. Then he chose his other life, and he called it duty. I couldn't feel my hands. "You're her sister," he said gently, almost kindly. "Half. That's the truth you came for, and didn't know you were asking for." The loch made a sound, a lap at the boards, like an animal shifting in sleep. "I killed Colin," he said then, conversational, like a man explaining a recipe. He was going to do for himself anyway. I did it softer. I told him we'd go out and lay a wreath where she went in, and he let me tie the knot. I told him it was to keep him safe. It was. I killed Morag when she told me she'd tell you. I waited for her at the bend, and I asked her to forgive me, and she touched my face, and then we both cried, and then she was quiet. Hamish I took from behind the bar when he was drunk enough to want it. I told him the water was a kind of absolution. It wasn't. It was wet. "You're telling me because you want me to—" "What?" I asked. "Arrest you? I'm not police. Forgive you? I don't—" "I'm telling you because I'm finished, and because I don't know what it means to go on," he said, "and because there's one more thing I have to do." He stepped past me. The boards complained. He walked to the edge and took a rope from a cleat. It was the big blue kind from the boathouse. Stiff, familiar. He threw one end into the water and tied the other into a bowline around his waist, like a man who knew what he was doing. "No," I said, and the word broke. "It's not for me," he said. "It's for you." He handed me the loose coil. My hands took it without asking me. "You'll pull me back," he said. "When my lungs are full, you'll learn how it feels. You'll keep me alive, and you'll know you kept me alive. And you'll carry that instead of your Dawes boxes. And then you'll go home and tell your story. And I'll sit where I sit. And every time I walk past this water, I'll know you chose to let me live with it." "Ewan," I said. But he was already stepping off the jetty, like a man stepping into a church. The water took him. The rope paid out sharp. Bit my hands. Burned skin. He went under. I hauled. The rope sliced and I tasted metal. He fought for nothing. He let me work. The knot held. He surfaced vomiting black, and I dragged him in like a catch, and we lay on the boards in the rain, gasping like fish. He rolled to his side and coughed until the night was full of it. Then he laughed, a terrible sound that had nothing to do with humor. "That," he said, his voice raw, "is what it is." I wanted to hit him. I wanted to hold him until he stopped shaking. I did neither. I pulled the rope free of him and hurled it into the boathouse, where it landed on the ledger's shelf, with a thud like a book closing. "You'll come with me now," I said. "You'll tell this in a room with lights that don't flicker, and someone to type it down." "I will," he said. "But to who? My constable? Your producer? Your mother? The kirk? The loch?" To me, I said, and then to whoever is after me. He sat up, put his face in his wet hands, and then took them away. All right, he said. All right. We walked to the station house like people leaving a funeral and failing to remember which of us was dead. I didn't sleep. I wrote. I recorded an episode that wasn't an episode. I said my father's name and Isla's and Ewan's. I said Ailsa until it stopped being a sound and became a place. The next morning, I took the tape to the police. Not Ewan's station. Inverness. I played it for a woman with a pen that clicked like a metronome. I said the words Ewan had said to me, and I did not make them pretty. She listened. She filled pages. She took the cassette like a midwife takes a child. They arrested Ewan in the afternoon. He didn't resist. He asked me to bring Isla his mother's keys. He said, if there was a funeral for his life, would I please not go? I didn't answer. I couldn't. He kept looking at my face as if it would tell him something. Tam sat on the church step and watched the van drive away. He did not wave. Isla washed the bar until the wood was pale. I took the train back to Glasgow with the ledger's images on my phone and the marks from the rope on my hands like a pilgrim's. Back in my flat, I put my father's box on the table and opened it. On top was a photo I hadn't noticed before or hadn't wanted to see. My father at a loch. A girl beside him, dark hair, eyes like mischief. He had his hand on her head, as if by doing so he could keep her from becoming a story. On the back, in his careful hand, Ailsa, August. And under that, in a different pen, a later pen, a hand that had finally learned how to wobble. Forgive me. I lay the photo down and stared at the ceiling until my eyes ached. Then I stood, went to the sink, and ran cold water over my hands. The marks stung, then throbbed. I let them. When the episode went out, I didn't do the sound design I usually did. I didn't add rain or loch or gulls. I let my voice carry and fail where it needed to. I said the names in order. Ailsa Stewart, Colin Ray, Ewan Forbes, Morag Kerr, Hamish Black. I said Lachlan Quinn last, not as a warning, but as a confession. I told the story, and I left spaces where the town had left spaces, and I said what Ewan had asked me to say, that none of it had made anything better, that everyone had meant to be kind, that kindness is a poor map for a place like this. After, I went to my mother's house and told her about the other daughter he had for 6 weeks, the sister I didn't get, and now would never. She listened and held my face in her hands and said, he was complicated, like she was describing furniture she'd lived with for years. Me too, I said. On my way home, I stopped at a hardware shop and bought a length of rope. I cut it apart in the kitchen with a knife that jumped and nicked me. I tied and untied bowlines until my fingers remembered, and then forgot, and then remembered again. I made one perfect knot, set it on the table, and looked at it. The rope didn't answer. It never does. Weeks later, Isla sent a package. Inside, wrapped in the tea towel I recognized, was the brass key with the stag. For when you come back, she'd written on a postcard of the kirk in sunshine. We keep rooms for folk that go away. The last thing in the envelope was a photo of the fairy tree at the bend, stripped of ribbons by wind. Someone had tied a single blue shoelace to a branch, looped it once, twice, and then made a knot even my hands could name without thinking. A bowline. The rescue knot. The one that won't slip. The one you give to someone you mean to save.
Our second story is done. The loch kept it secret until it didn't, and nothing was the same after. Now we're back to a quiet American town where calm shattered with a single 911 call, a basement apartment, a hidden relationship, and a decision that couldn't be undone. Final case of the day, Westbridge. Prologue. The basement door. On a warm Saturday in early June, the small town of Westbridge looked calm. Lawns were trimmed. Kids rode bikes. From the outside, nothing was wrong. At 6:42 p.m., a 911 call broke that calm. A woman said there was a man lying still in the basement apartment of a duplex on Maple Street. She sounded breathless. She said she was there with her husband. She said the door had been open. She said they were worried about their friend. His name was Jamie Rivers. He was 32. He worked part-time at a local gym and stocked shelves at night. He had kind eyes and a habit of smiling, even when he was tired. When police arrived, the scene looked messy. Drawers were open. A backpack was dumped. A lamp was on the floor. In the basement, Jamie lay on the rug. He had been shot twice. There was no gun near him. The woman who called 911 was Elena Turner. She stood by a shelf, arms crossed tight. Her husband, Mark Turner, was near the stairs. He looked pale and shaken. This is the story of how a hidden relationship came to light, how a plan came apart, and how a community learned that even quiet towns hold loud secrets. I will tell it simply. I will tell you what people said, what evidence showed, and where the truth finally landed. People and places. Westbridge sits a few miles off the interstate, by a slow river and long fields. People go to church on Sundays. People wave at the gas station. It is not a place where you expect a crime story, but crimes happen where people live, and people live everywhere. Mark Turner, 34, was a forklift operator at the food warehouse outside town. He started at 5 a.m. and finished by mid-afternoon. He had strong arms, a quiet voice, and a habit of saying, "I'm fine," even when he was not. He had been married to Elena for 8 years. They had no children. Friends said they seemed steady, if not warm. Elena, 31, worked at a hair salon. She was quick and neat. She liked order, folded towels, lined up brushes, a perfect part down the middle of her own dark hair. She was also loyal. If she thought you were hers, she held on. Jamie lived under a noisy family. His basement place was half finished. Grey paint, old carpet, a couch that sagged. He was not rich, but he was generous. He would bring protein bars for the kids upstairs. He would help neighbors carry groceries. Many people liked him. A few did not. It is like that in every town. The hidden line. In stories like this, there is always a line, and someone steps over it. Mark met Jamie at the gym. Mark came for his back pain. Jamie showed him simple stretches and how to breathe when lifting. They started talking. They kept talking. It began with coffee, then text. It moved to the park, then a bar 2 towns away, then a room at the motel by the highway. It was slow and then fast. It felt wrong and felt right at the same time. That is how many affairs feel. Their messages were simple and risky. You okay? Miss your smile. Tonight. I can only stay an hour. They kept it quiet. They did not post photos. They did not hold hands in town. They picked nights when Elena worked late or went to visit her sister. Mark told himself it was a phase. He told himself it was private. He told himself that if he hid it well, no one would get hurt. He did not know that secrets always push toward the light. The first crack. Elena noticed small things first, as careful people do. Mark changed his phone code. He started showering as soon as he came home. He had new playlists. He wore cologne to the warehouse. He said he was tired, then stayed up texting. One night, Elena heard the quiet buzz of Mark's phone on the dresser. He slept deep. She told herself not to look. She looked. There it was. Jay. There it was. You're safe with me. There it was. A longer message that felt like a hand to the chest. I don't want to hide us forever. I want to sit with you in the sun. Elena felt heat rush to her face, then cold. She had cried before, but not like this. It was not only betrayal, it was confusion. The other person was a man. She did not expect that. She did not scream at Mark that night. She closed the message and set the phone back down. In the morning, she made coffee. She asked if he wanted toast. She watched him laugh at something on TV. Later, she drove to work and sat in her car for 10 minutes, staring at the dashboard. When she did move, she moved with purpose. She told her boss she had a headache and went home. She searched Mark's closet. She found a hotel receipt. She found a folded paper with a phone number and a name, Jamie. She looked Jamie up on social media. There was his smile. There were pictures of the river, of the gym, of a cheap seafood dinner that still looked happy. There were no photos of Mark. Elena felt something new then, something like a knife, but duller and wider. Inversion. She felt that her life had turned inside out. That night, Elena asked Mark quietly, "Is there someone else?" He lied, softly. He said no. He touched her arm. She moved away. She did not confront him again in words. The Friday plan. On Friday, June 7th, Elena made a plan. It was not a detailed plan on paper. It was a plan made of anger and humiliation. And that is a kind of plan that sometimes feels like breathing. She checked Mark's schedule. He would be home by 3, and he had said, casually, in the kitchen, that he might go for a drive later to clear his head. Elena heard the words and saw the picture behind them. At lunch, Elena told her boss she needed Saturday off. She texted her sister that she might visit Sunday. She bought groceries and, at the hardware store, a cheap glass punch tool. She put it in her purse. She also took from a shoebox in their bedroom a small handgun. Mark had bought it after there were break-ins on the other side of town. They had shot it together once in a gravel pit. Elena wrapped the gun in a towel and put it in her tote, under a hairdryer. No one looked there. No one, except her. Around 5, Mark said he was going to the river. He kissed Elena on the cheek. She did not turn. He left. Elena waited, then drove to Maple Street. She had never been there. The duplex sat quiet under a maple with leaves so thick they made a green ceiling. A neighbor watered flowers, looked up, then looked down. Elena parked around the corner. She walked to the back. The basement door had a sticky lock. Jamie sometimes left it half latched for friends. That is something people do in small towns. It is a kindness and a risk. This time, it was a risk. Elena knocked. Jamie called. "Just a minute," from inside. She heard the thud of bare feet on carpet. When he opened the door, she saw surprise, then worry. He had seen her photo on Mark's phone once, reflected in a dark screen. "Elena," he said. She said, "We need to talk." He let her in. The last conversation. Jamie made tea. He sat across from Elena at the little kitchen table. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and something else, like the heat of a recent shower. Elena placed her hands flat on the table and looked at them. When she spoke, her voice was small and exact. "How long?" "A few months," Jamie said. "Do you love him?" Jamie looked at the floor. "I care about him. I think he cares about me. It's complicated." "Does he? Did you ask him to leave me?" "No. I told him to be honest with you. That's all. I don't want to steal him." He paused. I just want to breathe." The word stung. Elena felt her throat close. She thought of the folded towels and the lined-up brushes, the small, perfect things she could control. "Did you stay together last night?" Jamie hesitated, then nodded once. "He slept here." Elena stood up. The chair legs scraped the tile. She moved to the window, opened it, and then closed it again, as if the room needed air and then didn't. Jamie stood too. "Elena, I'm sorry. I didn't plan this. He didn't plan this. People ... She turned. "People choose." He said nothing. In a different version of this story, they might have kept talking. They might have cried. They might have called Mark. They might have gone outside and walked under the thick leaves. In that version, no one would have been shot, and we would not be here. That is not this version. Elena reached into her tote and took out the towel-wrapped gun. She did it with the same neatness she used at the salon. She unwrapped it, held it, and said in a voice that was not loud, "You broke my life." Jamie stepped back and raised his hands. "Elena, please. Please don't do this." His voice was steady because he trained people at the gym to breathe when they were scared. Elena raised the gun. Later, she would say everything went white. She would say she saw herself from above, like a camera in a corner. She would say she did not remember pulling the trigger. Memory is tricky during shock, but facts are not. There were 2 shots. The small basement sucked in the sound and spit it back. Jamie fell. Elena felt the room tilt and right itself. The gun felt heavy, then light. She stood, breathing hard. She looked around. She saw the open drawers. She had not pulled them open yet. She did now. She dumped a backpack, knocked over a lamp, kicked a chair, and used the glass punch to make a neat hole in the back door pane. The tool made a tiny tap that would not wake neighbors. She reached through and unlocked the door, though it had never been locked. She picked up Jamie's phone and put it in her tote. She wiped the table with her sleeve. She wiped the doorknob. She wiped the tea mug. She left the gun wrapped in the towel in her tote and walked out. She drove around the block twice, then went home the long way. The sky was still light. She washed her hands with lemon soap. She sat on the couch. The TV played a game show where people guessed words and won trips to Florida. When Mark came in, she stood and said, "I need to check on Jamie." He hasn't answered. It was a line she had prepared on the drive. It felt thin. It held. Mark frowned, then nodded, then followed her to the car. The call. They parked in front this time, in plain view. Elena knocked on the top door and then the back door. No answer. Mark called out, "Jamie!" His voice trembled. They walked in. The drawers were open. The lamp was on the floor. Elena stepped back, as if she had never seen the room. Mark moved toward the stairs, then stopped. "I can't," he whispered. Elena went down instead. In one version, she would have stayed upstairs. In this version, she went down and saw what she already knew. She made herself gasp. She ran back up, took out her phone, and dialed 911. Her voice was breathless, and that part was real. Police came, sealed the scene, took statements. Elena held Mark's hand on the porch. He squeezed back like a man in free fall. In the first hour of any homicide, many things are possible. In the next days, many things grow narrow. That is what happened here. What the evidence said. I spoke with Detective Alvarez, a patient man with a notebook that was always half full. He told me what they found. The drawers were open, but nothing obvious was missing. There was cash in a jar in the kitchen, untouched. A TV was still on the dresser. The hole in the back door glass was small and neat. The broken shards lay mostly outside on the concrete step, not inside on the kitchen floor. That is the sign of staging, Alvarez said. People who break in leave more of the glass inside than out. People who break out or fake a break-in sometimes forget that detail. There were 2 shell casings on the rug. They matched a 9mm handgun. There were faint wipe marks on the table in straight lines, the way a careful person might wipe. There were no obvious fingerprints on the mugs. Jamie's phone was missing. His smartwatch, however, still sat on his charger by the bed. Detectives pulled the health data. Around 5:53 p.m., his heart rate spiked. At 5:54, it flatlined. The time of death was clear. Neighbors said they heard no shouting. One neighbor's motion light went on at 5:30 and again at 6:05. Their doorbell camera showed a car circling the block around 6:07, the same make and color as Elena's sedan. The image was grainy. You could say it was any car like that, but later you would not. Mark's phone, when checked with consent, showed he had been at the river park from 5:15 to 6:10, walking a slow loop. A teen couple took a selfie by the river with Mark in the background. He looked like a man thinking hard. Elena's phone location was off from 5:20 to 6:30. The battery did not die. Location services were toggled off. That is not illegal, but detectives notice it. They also noticed a search on Elena's laptop from 2 days earlier. How to break small window quietly. There was another search, months old, about how to clean a gun. There was a video bookmarked on gun safety. These things can be innocent. Together, they start to point. At the salon, a co-worker remembered Elena leaving early on Friday, saying she had a headache and that men were liars. The co-worker laughed when she said it, thinking it was a joke. At the motel near the highway, a clerk remembered Mark and Jamie checking in once in April. He remembered because they had been kind and tipped him $5, and because kindness is rare at 1 a.m. The motel camera kept no footage after a week. The clerk's memory was all they had there. All of this is the careful work of small-town policing. Talk to people, write names on cards, pull camera feeds, print maps, draw lines. The line that mattered most ran from Mark's heart to Jamie's kitchen to Elena's tote. The phone in the drawer. 3 days after the shooting, detectives got a search warrant for the Turner home. It is never easy to serve a warrant to a family in grief, even if you suspect one of them. The team came mid-morning. Elena stood in the doorway, arms crossed tight again. Mark sat on the couch with his head down. In the bedroom closet, on the top shelf, under folded sweaters, detectives found a towel. Inside the towel was a 9mm pistol. In the bottom of Eleanor's vanity, under a hairdryer, was a black rectangle wrapped in a white plastic bag. It was Jamie's phone. Elena said nothing as they brought the items out. Mark raised his head and whispered, "What is that?" Down at the station, Elena at first asked for a lawyer. Then she sat for a while, looked at her hands, and began to talk. She said she had gone to talk. She said she had not meant to kill anyone. She said Jamie had reached for something, and she had panicked. Later, the evidence would show there was no weapon near Jamie, and the marks on the table were wipe marks, not signs of a fight. Elena would change her story again. This happens often when truth crashes into fear. When Detective Alvarez asked why she took the phone, Eleanor stared at the wall for a long time. Then she said, "I didn't want the messages to hurt me any more than they already had." She blinked and added, "I wanted to control something." Control is a strong word in cases like this. It is a key. The confession and the courtroom. Mark learned the full truth that same day. Elena told him in a small room with cinderblock walls. He put his hands to his face and stayed that way for a long minute. He did not shout. He did not stand. He said one sentence I still hear when I walk past the river. "You did not have to make a grave to solve this." The prosecutor charged Elena with murder. The public defender met her and explained the difference between first degree and second degree, between life and years, between a trial and a plea. Elena's face did not move much. She kept her hair perfect as long as she could, even in jail. In court, the facts were simple. The jury saw the doorbell camera of a car like Elena's. They saw the towel-wrapped gun from her closet. They saw the small punch tool. They saw photos of the glass on the wrong side of the door. They saw that Jamie's phone was found in Elena's vanity. They heard about the missing location data. They heard the smartwatch time of death. They heard how 2 shots, calm and controlled, do not sound like an accident. The defense spoke about shock. They spoke about betrayal. They spoke about a mind in a storm. They said Elena had lived in a world where no one taught her what to do with a secret like this. They asked for manslaughter. They asked the jury to picture a heart that broke so fast it became a fist before it could think. The prosecutor did not sneer. He was not cruel. He spoke softly and used short sentences. He told the jury that pain is real, but so is choice. He told them that you cannot stage a scene by accident. He told them that 2 bullets are not a cry for help. They are an action. The jury took 4 hours. They found Eleanor guilty of second-degree murder, not first. They believed she had not planned the killing days ahead with cold intent, but they believed she had made the choice to kill when she had the chance to leave. The judge sentenced her to 25 years. She could ask for parole after 20. Elena did not cry when the sentence was read. She looked at Mark. Mark looked at the floor. After. Mark moved out of their house at the end of that summer. The landlord on Maple Street found a new tenant for the basement by fall. The gym where Jamie worked added a bench by the front window with a small plaque. For Jamie, who made room for others. People asked me, when I finished the interviews, what I thought. I said this: secrets are like water behind a dam. They press and press. You can build a wall and patch small leaks. You can turn up the music so you don't hear the drip. But water will find a crack, and when it does, it cuts stone. Mark's secret did not start as a plan to hurt anyone. He told me that. He said he does not know why he reached for Jamie's hand the first time in the dark, or why he smiled when Jamie smiled, or why the sun felt warmer on days after he had seen him. He said he wished he had spoken to Eleanor honestly before everything broke. He did not say this to excuse himself. He said it for the record. Eleanor's act did not start as a legal brief either. It started as heat in the face and cold in the hands, and the belief that she had been pushed out of her own life. That belief became a choice, and that choice made a grave. We can understand the feeling without accepting the act. I tell stories like this because they are not rare. The details change, the streets and names shift, but the core stays. A secret, a discovery, a choice, a consequence. If we can name the steps, maybe someone will recognize them earlier and step off the path before the last one. The river. At the river park, there is a spot where the water turns slow around a bend. You can hear the highway faintly. You can hear birds louder. People walk there at dusk. Sometimes they sit and think. Mark goes there. He told me this on a bench. He said he sits by the slow water and says the names of the people he has hurt and asks for forgiveness in a quiet voice. He said he works the morning shift now and sleeps at night. He said the sun still feels warm sometimes and he lets it. He did not ask me to make him look good in this story. He did not ask me to keep anything out. He did not ask me to blame Elena more or less. He wanted one thing, to say Jamie's name right. Jamie Rivers, he said, looking at the water, was kind. That is the last line I will give you. The rest is a town going on, and a lesson as old as any river. When you carry a secret that changes who you are, honesty is not a luxury. It is a rope you can hold before you slip. Thanks for watching till the end. If this case kept you thinking, like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next investigation. Question for you. Do you think the verdict was fair? Why or why not? At what moment could this tragedy have been prevented? Who had the last clear off-ramp? Mark or Elena? Drop your thoughts below and tell me your city and local time. See you in the next one.
Case closed. Archived in the synthetic vault. If you dare to return, the next file awaits. truecrime.exe. The line between fiction and fear.